The last pricing scheme we're going to look at is price discrimination, and this is when a firm charges different prices for the same good or service. So we typically think of prices as fixed and applicable to all customers. So everybody pays $3.50 for a gallon of gas, but a firm can increase its profit if it can charge different prices. There's some people who have high value uses for, say, gasoline, and others who have low value. Now, it doesn't happen in the gasoline market, but there are plenty of other markets where it does happen, such as pharmaceuticals. If you can charge a higher price in the market where people value a drug more and lower where they value it less, then the drug manufacturer can make more profit from that. So if you look at something like the original iPhone, when it first came out in September of 2007, it was charging $600 for the iPhone, and 2 months later it dropped the price to $400 in order to attract other customers who weren't willing to pay $600, but they were willing to pay $400. Now, of course, that created an uproar, and Apple gave those early adopters a little bonus. They gave them some credit at an Apple store. But again, it's really the early adopters were the ones who had a much higher value for the iPhone than the later adopters. And what Apple was trying to do was extract more surplus from the earlier adopters who had a more inelastic demand curve relative to the later adopters. And we can see this when we have our demand curve here. So our demand is going to be the demand curve with our marginal revenue curve, and the marginal cost is going to be $2. And if the firm is a perfectly competitive market, it's going to charge marginal cost, and it's going to sell 32 units at $2 a piece. The firm will earn no economic profit, and this would be the consumer surplus. They're getting all the surplus at $128. Now, we know that a firm that's a price searcher is going to set marginal revenue equal to marginal cost, and so this firm here is going to reduce output to 16 units, charge $6 a piece. It's going to earn some economic profit. The consumer surplus here is $32. The producer surplus is going to be $64. And now we know from our look at monopoly that there's going to be a deadweight loss given that 16 additional units to 32. The 16th or the 17th through the 32nd unit are not being sold, which consumers value more than the marginal cost to the producer of producing it, but it's not in their interest to do so. So this is the deadweight loss from the reduced sales, given the monopolist has a much better profit margin from doing this. So one thing we look at, what we do know is that the producer loses the consumer surplus here, and it also loses the potential for the deadweight loss. If it can extract some of those by charging different prices instead of just one, then it may be able to increase its profit. So in this case that we have here illustrated, it can only charge $6. It can't charge a differentiated for a differential price, but if it could, then it could increase profit. So let's look at the first example, which is first-degree price discrimination. And this is simply charging every customer their reservation wage, the maximum they're willing to pay. If you look at the FAFSA form, what that does is it gives colleges some indication of how much you're willing to pay, and they're able to charge different students the maximum they're willing to pay. It's a form of first-degree price discrimination. Car dealerships are the same way. The first thing they ask you is how much are you willing to spend. What they're trying to do is size you up to find out how much is the maximum you're willing to spend for a car so they can extract all the surplus from you that they can. And if you're not willing to pay a lot, they'll charge you a lower price than somebody else. So what they're looking to do is charge as many people as they can, the highest price they can. Anything above its marginal cost, they're making some surplus from it, and they're willing to do it. The higher the price, of course, the better. But they're willing to walk everybody down the demand curve until price is equal to marginal cost, and they're able to extract all of the surplus. So, for example, given the example we just used, the consumer values the first unit at $9.75, so the price charged is $9.75. The second consumer values a unit at $9.50, so that person is charged $9.50. The third enjoys it at $9.25, so they're priced at $9.25, and they pay $9.25. So again, what this is saying, the first person who buys whatever item this is, they value it at $9.75, and the firm is able to charge them $9.75. The second values at $9.50, they pay $9.50. The third values at $9.25, and so on. And we do this all the way down the line, and we can see that the firm is able to extract all of the surplus, anything above $2, and their total revenue is $188, which was more than the surplus if it only could charge one price. So this is this total revenue is $180, total surplus is $124, which was more than what they could charge. They were charging $16 16 units at $4, so they were only getting $64 in surplus. Now they're getting $124. And we can see that's close to what we were seeing. If they could change this here, they're extracting all the surplus from the consumer, and they're better off. Now, the other thing we want to look at is second-degree price discrimination. And this is when a firm charges so much for so many units and then charges a lower price for additional units. You see this with something like pizza. Pizza Hut will charge $9.99 for the first pizza and $5.99 for a second pizza. And what it knows is you're willing to pay $9.99 for the first pizza, but you're not willing to pay more than, say, $5 for the second, so it charges you $5.99 for the second, and it gets you to buy two pizzas. That $5.99 is above its marginal cost, and therefore is willing to sell it to you for anything, at least including up to and above its marginal cost. Another example is the buy one, get one half off. This is a means of second-degree price discrimination. They get you to buy two pairs when you normally or typically would only be willing to buy one. Again, this is based on the diminishing marginal utility. The more something you have, the less you're willing to pay for an additional unit. Instead of charging you the half-off price for both, they can charge you more for the first unit, and you're willing to pay less for the second unit. So again, we looked at pizza, shoes, electric utilities do this. And this is a way of second-degree price discrimination in order to extract more surplus. Now, don't confuse this with the unethical practice of BOGO after they jack up the price 33%, because what they're trying to do is basically get you to buy two pairs at their normal full price. And I've seen this at many department stores. One does buy two pair of pants, get three pair free. Now, normally they charge $30 for a pair of pants. If you were to buy five, it would be $150. What they do is they run sales periodically where it's buy two, get three free, but they immediately jack the price up to $75, and people go and buy two pairs for $150 and get three pair free, but it's no different than buying five pair at $30, which is its normal price. So this is not the same. That's simply a way of getting people to think they're getting a deal when they're not. So here we can illustrate this second-degree price discrimination. Profit maximizing price is $6, 16 units are sold, but the firm offers additional units for $4 and consumers buy 8 more, and now consumer surplus is going to be greater than what it had been. This is what it was 40, was 32, but now you add an additional 8 consumer surplus, and they're now getting a total of 40, and producer surplus is greater than what it was. It had been 64, but now the producer is able to get this area here, which is now a total of 80, but notice that the firm still has some dead weight loss to deal with, that if it can extract that, it can be better off, which it did with first-degree price discrimination. The last one we look at is called third-degree price discrimination. This is more common. We see this more often. You'll see this paperback book sell for less than a hardback book. Computers, when they first come out, or cell phones, sell for more than, after a year later, after the early adopters had bought them, who have more elastic demand curve. Business travelers pay more for airline tickets than vacation travelers. That would be third-degree price discrimination. Retailers will actually dent furniture in order to sell it to other people. So, for example, let's say the cost of obtaining a refrigerator by Sears is $900. They normally price it at $1,500. What they do is they'll dent the furniture and sell it for $1,100. They're still getting people to pay more than its marginal cost of $900 for the refrigerator, but they are not going to be able to sell it for $1,600. People aren't willing to pay $1,600 or $1,500 for it, but they are willing to pay up to, say, $1,300. What Sears can do is dent the furniture, make it look like you're getting a deal at $1,200, and they're able to extract more surplus from consumers. It's above its marginal cost. Colleges, retailers give deals to college students. You look at software, you can look at movie theaters. These are ways of getting students who have a more elastic demand curve. So what third-degree price discrimination involves is segmenting your market into high-valued and low-valued users, charging the high-valued users more money than you're charging the low-valued users. And we can draw this up. We're going to have the high-valued users with a more inelastic demand curve on the right. We'll call this the market 2, and the more elastic demand curve on the left, we'll call this market 1. So college students would be on the left, business travelers would be on the right, things like that. So people have a much higher value, more inelastic demand curve on the right. Those on the left have a more elastic demand curve. They have more alternatives. The marginal cost is the same in both markets. We'll say it's $1. The firm sets its marginal revenue equal to the marginal cost. It charges $7 in the more inelastic market and charges $3 in the more elastic market. And this is the theory behind price discrimination. It's charging two different groups different prices. Now, in order to price discriminate, the firm has to be able to, it has to have market power. In a competitive market, it won't happen because price will get driven down to marginal cost. So it has to have some price setting capabilities, which means it has to have market power. It also has to segment its market. It has to be able to segment into high-valued versus low-valued users. And then lastly, it must prevent arbitrage, which means preventing people from buying the product in the low price and turning around and selling it in the high price, which undercuts the firm. An example of this is Canadian pharmacies re-importing medicine back into the United States to sell at a discount. If that happens, then the pharmaceutical companies are going to have to cut off the selling to Canadian pharmacies at a lower price than what it sells to American pharmacies, because they're simply cutting out the business for the American pharmacies. So, one question: for which are you more likely to observe price discrimination? Boxes of peanut butter Cheerios or the services of a top surgeon? And so think about that for a second. Where are you going to see more price discrimination? And if you look at the outcome, peanut butter Cheerios are, first, it's a more competitive market. Second, you can easily arbitrage Cheerios. You can't easily arbitrage the services of a doctor. Now, last question: is it ethical? And this is a very important question. A firm that's simply trying to extract all the surplus from its customers won't have loyal customers for long, and therefore we can, in one hand, say no, it's not ethical, or we say it's a bad business practice, which makes a lot of sense. But again, you really want to consider your customers as your partners, not your adversaries, someone to extract a lot of rent. I think of a marriage. My objective of marriage is not to extract all the surplus I can from my wife, but to both share in the benefits that we both obtain from a marriage. And these are a little different, but I want to look at something different. What about airlines and other industries with high fixed costs? Without the ability to price discriminate, a lot of these markets would not exist at all. So, for example, if you look at price discrimination with the airline, the fixed cost to fly a 757 from Raleigh-Durham to San Diego is $56,400, and we'll say the marginal cost, adding one more person to that plane, increases that cost by, say, $10. So the average total cost for a plane with 188 seats is $310. If the plane charges $310, it's not going to fill all the seats. It may only fill 120 of the seats, which means its total revenue is $37,200, which is less than its total cost of $57,600. Remember, its fixed costs already are $56,400, so it has to at least get its fixed costs cleared in order to do so. So in this case here, if it has to charge just one price, it's going to have to charge $310, and that plane is not going to fly for long because they can't keep losing money. However, if it can charge 63 people $510, 63 people $310, and 62 people $110, then the total revenue is $58,480, which exceeds the $58,280, and the plane will fly. And this is an example of price discrimination and why it's beneficial to the consumer. As a matter of fact, it's most beneficial likely to the high-valued user who pays the higher price, because they obviously have the more inelastic demand curve, the more pressing need for that good or service. This is the end of the videos on pricing strategies.